I was wondering, it seems like you have kind of three themes in your talk. You talked about energy, you talked about time, and you talked about the global economy, money, in other words. I kind of have a concern about, you talked in your first chapter about peak oil and the oil depletion rate, and how do you think that is going to affect the ability of the global economy to continue functioning? And if you could just say a bit about that, because it seems like that's the major thing that you've added to this book over the previous version.
When you look around the world and you look at investment trends, for example, in automobiles, in air travel, expanding airports, investing in airlines, and so forth, you get the impression that the assumption is that oil production is going to keep going up as far as we can see in the future. My own sense is, and I'm not alone in this, is that the peaking of world oil production is probably not very far away. In fact, it probably could occur almost any year now. But the world is not prepared. I can cite a couple of countries that are reasonably well prepared. Iceland being one, now getting most of its energy from geothermal energy and hydro. Sweden, which is a country that is in the process of restructuring its tax system along the lines I described, reducing income taxes and raising energy taxes. Their plan is to be able to function without oil by 2020, if need be. But very few countries are doing that sort of planning. Certainly we're not. I mean, we're beginning to talk a bit about these things, and the President finally in the State of the Union address talked about this, and he mentioned switchgrass. I mean, there are only half dozen people in the country who know what switchgrass is. I can just see people in the living room. Switchgrass. What's the President's problem? Switchgrass? I mean, I don't think we're close. I mean, there's also an interesting incident. I was in Colorado in February, and I was in Boulder, and was meeting with some of the people at NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, sort of the renewable energy equivalent of Oak Ridge for nuclear power. And if I can remember the timing, it went something like this. On a Wednesday, 32 employees at NREL, fairly senior employees, got pink slips saying they were fired for budget reasons. A week later, on a Wednesday, they were terminated effectively on Friday. The next Wednesday, President Bush was going to NREL to sort of give a talk and tout his new support for renewable energy resources. And then his advanced people realized there was a problem. Those 32 people were hired back on Tuesday, the day before he arrived. True story. What it shows is that there's very little relationship at present between the rhetoric at the White House level and actual program commitments. Now, at some point, that gap will have to narrow. You can't keep saying one thing and not doing anything for too long. But for now, there's a big gap between the rhetoric and the reality.